Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Hungary's new political era is colliding with urgent economic reality, as billions in frozen EU funds hang in the balance ahead of a critical August deadline. After unseating Viktor Orbán, the new leadership is racing to reset ties with Brussels and restore trust with the European Commission. Joining us today on TVP World to break this all down is Csaba Lukács, Managing Director of Magyar Hung, an experienced journalist analyzing Hungary's political transformation and its European implications. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening and thank you for the invitation.
So last time we spoke was before the election, and now it does seem like Péter Magyar will be becoming the Prime Minister, and he's heading to Brussels to talk with the European Commission President. Now, what concrete signals suggest that this is perhaps a reset with Brussels when it comes to relationship, or mostly just political messaging?
The new Hungarian government hasn't even taken office yet, but in the 2.5 weeks since the election, it has achieved significantly more than its predecessor in terms of securing EU funds. However, while Viktor Orbán had 3 years to lift the freezes, Magyar Péter must do so in 3 months. So it can be considered a major development that in 70 days after the Hungarian elections and a week and a half before the formation of the new parliament, Magyar Péter had already held personal talks in Brussels with Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Antonio Costa, President of the European Council. The approximately 1 hour meeting which was held today with von der Leyen, it's particularly significant as during this meeting they summarized the possibilities and timeline for drawing down the frozen EU funds. So the process is not simple and it is by no means short. Yet the deadline for utilizing the frozen recovery funds it's 31 of August. So the Hungarian side must first amend the National Recovery Plan, which requires legislative proposals and parliamentary decisions. Then Commission must review this plan, and finally the member state must approve it. So only then can the fulfillment of the commitments begin. However, the investments must include those that can realistically be completed by end of August.
Right, like I mentioned, this is rather difficult to do everything within this short span of time. Do you think that the goals being set out is realistic, or do you think that there are some mechanism within the European Commission to at least release some of these funds and perhaps make some reform as they go?
The government has some leeway. Developments that have already been completed but not yet accounted can be reclassified here, and it could be a significant relief in part of the amount of earmarked for investments is placed to the Hungarian Development Bank, as this could then be considered fulfillment. So the new Hungarian government and high-ranking officials of the European Commission have already held several rounds of consultations, and Péter Magyar and Ursula von der Leyen have now taken stock of these. So we have good hopes that they will sign an agreement. Péter Magyar told for my newspaper Magyar Hung's Brussels correspondence the following after this meeting with the Commission President. We have just concluded a very constructive meeting with the Commission President. We agreed that we will return sometime around May 25 to finalize the political agreement, under which Hungary and the Hungarian people will receive the 10.4 billion euros they are entitled to. So the majority of which is non-repayable aid, and the smaller portion is a loan with very favorable interest rates. Magyar added that the negotiations were productive in other areas as well, and that no new issues arose that they were not already aware of. So we have good hopes that everything will be done until then.
All right, and like you mentioned, Orbán had decades to build the whole system up, where Magyar only have 3 months. Now, are there any institutional or political structure in place that will be difficult to dismantle?
The new government commitments are the fight against corruption. It could be done extremely soon if they will get the power. Freedom of the press, the suspension of illegal state subsidies for the media, and academic freedom, and the renationalization of foundation universities. So those promises can be fulfilled soon. And TISA has the two-thirds in the parliament, so there is no legal obstacles. They can vote anything if it's well prepared. But we will have the inauguration of the new parliament in the 9th of May. So before that, they couldn't do anything more.
All right. And now when it comes to Magyar's trip to Brussels, do you think that most of the conversation is some negotiation involved when it comes to the technological aspect of actually meeting these standards, or is it more about rebuilding political trust with the Commission?
In my opinion, it's a question of the trust, and also EU, it's real... They want to have a normal relation with Hungary, and it's a common interest on that. So we could see what Orbán did in terms of obstacling all kind of EU decisions. Now probably TISA will not put those obstacles in front of decisions regarding Ukraine or NATO or anything else. So probably it's a common interest for the both sides to have a good condition. But which is really hard for TISA party, which won the election, is that they are facing pressure on multiple fronts. The parliament will convene and vote for the new prime minister, but it's still unclear who will serve as a justice minister. We don't know yet who will be the interior minister, for example, so they have a lack of personnel, and they must simultaneously from the new administration while trying to prevent oligarchs close to the Fidesz from moving money out from the country. So that's a huge issue now. There are increasing signs that they are attempting to funnel hundreds of millions of euros into countries from which it will be difficult to recover. We also have reports that certain oligarchs are heading to the US or the Gulf countries. So while TISA is trying to form the new government, the money is flowing out from the country.
Right. This very huge undertaking, like you mentioned, with the government still not completely constructed yet, and people already moving money out. There's political complications as well. But again, the deadline and the clock is still ticking. Are there any reforms that are non-negotiable for the European Commission that perhaps if the was meet before the deadline would give Hungary a fighting chance to get some of these funds?
To be honest, we don't know too much about what's happened inside. So now it's the smiling diplomacy between the new government and the EU. So we don't know if they put any other criteria to get the money. Now everybody trying to face their best face to be as soon as possible everything. We could saw what's happened with Poland before. So probably that's the procedure that they are trying to really help the new government to get the money as soon as possible. And those questions who are on the table will be discussed later.
All right. Now, looking at the big picture, stepping back with the new government, a new era coming in, how is that going to affect the Hungarian-EU relationship?
Hopefully in a best way. So the majority of Hungarians were voting for a pro-EU party, and the people really wants to be part of EU. So TISA has no other way to get as close as possible with the EU values. And we could see what is Orbán doing now. So they are still pushing that pro-Russian, anti-EU rhetoric. And meanwhile, Viktor Orbán has replaced half of the Fidesz representatives elected in the parliament. They changed his stuff to those influencers and strange people who are not politicians. So probably they will push it that communication against EU. And he himself has decided, so Orbán has decided to do not take up his seat. He has been a member of the National Assembly since 1990, so this will be the first freely elected parliament without him. So that would be a really new thing in the Hungarian politics.
Right, definitely.
And also many prominent Fidesz politicians are in a similar situation. So we understand that they all made this decision to Orbán request or under his pressure. And even the former speaker of the parliament who was Speaker of the National Assembly for 60 years, László Kövér, will be not member of the parliament. So he has a totally new crew, and we will see how Fidesz will react for the new situation.
Right, and last but not least, with the Hungarian government's position on EU and on Russia now more clear, the question still remains about their general sentiment towards the support of Ukraine, because that is one of the topics that has been a little bit more polarizing within Hungary. Do you think that by walking closer with the European Union, the Hungarian government will also be persuaded into taking a more pro-Ukrainian stance?
I'm definitely sure. Magyar Péter yesterday made an announcement that he was initiating a meeting with President Zelensky in Ukraine, but in the Hungarian part of the country near the Hungarian border. That's a very new thing. We could see that Orbán never visited Zelensky during the war. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we will have a good connection. And also another sign, former Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó has been granted parliamentary immunity. He's a MP of parliament, and Fidesz nominated him from the position of deputy speaker of the parliament. However, Péter Magyar made it clear that the 141 members of TISA faction would not vote for a Russian agent to hold the second most important position in the parliament. So Fidesz was forced to nominate someone else. So we can see how TISA is shifting step by step from Russia to Ukraine. Obviously, they doesn't want to jump a big one, because we knew that, unfortunately, like 30-40% of Hungarians are pro-Russian. Right. So he has to be very careful on that. But hopefully, they will be much more pro-Ukrainian than the former government.
All right, so a political tightrope to walk there. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of challenges up ahead, a little bit short of time to work on it as well. So we'll have to see how it goes. In the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.